This show is sponsored by my new business, MA Capital. I had success in my previous business acquiring companies before I exited earlier in the year. MA Capital is set up to support business owners on that journey, whether they want to sell now or they want to set up for a profitable exit later in the future. If this has piqued your interest and you'd like to work with me, head over to macapital.co.uk. Okay, so welcome back to the Fast Pound, Slow Pound podcast. Today we've got on Charlie, who went from business owner to business broker, and that's what we're going to be discussing. So Charlie, if you could just introduce yourself to our listeners and viewers. Guys, just a quick one. Over 75% of our listeners aren't subscribed. So if you are enjoying this, please show some support by liking, commenting or subscribing wherever you're watching the podcast. It'll allow us to keep getting on amazing guests and it's massively appreciated. Back to the show.
So yeah, my name's Charlie Norton. I'm a business broker for Vamos Business Transfer Agents. As Matt said, I used to own multiple businesses for the past 14, 13 years. And we were just talking about how I got started. So I started as quite a young man, about 15. And then I've had various businesses, and I suppose the catchphrase of the last couple of years, no money down deals. And my first no money down deal was when I was 22, so that was nearly 10 years ago. I'm 32 next month in March. Not sure when this pod's going to be released, but might be my birthday by then. Who knows?
Yeah. What business was that then, Charlie?
So that was a HGV training school actually called Newcroft Training. It's a weird story actually. So I grew up in the transport industry. That was my dad's industry. So I sort of was a yard and tea boy, earning £150 a week. You know, just do this, go there, do this. Yeah. Driving all sorts of cars at 15, which was cool, like McLarens and Ferraris, and only moving about an inch, but still cool experience. Doing a tea boy sort of job for him. And eventually I became a qualified transport manager, which is a legal requirement for all haulage companies to have a CPC holder, transport manager. And from that, I set up a business called Transport Factory, which was a training and consultancy business. I remember ringing up my local competition, the bigger players in my market, and I spoke to a company called Sigma, and Sigma sort of turned around to me and said, I'm not sure why you're starting up, because I'm 2 miles this side of you, and then the other side of you is a company called Newcroft, and we're about to buy Newcroft, he said. Well, great, you know, and I was only about 19, 20 at the time, and I thought, shit, you know, that's my luck, you know, getting into a competitive market. So next day I actually popped my head into Newcroft, my big head in there, and I went, that's quality. I went, is this place for sale? And Kim, God bless her, little lady, she went, who told you this? Who said this? I went, Mark at Sigma told me. She just all went red. She went, he's been telling everyone that he's bought me out and we agreed a deal last year and he hasn't paid me any money. He's just talking crap, basically, that's what she said. And I just went, I'll buy it, you know, not knowing how or how on earth I'd buy it, what the price was or the performance of the business at the time. But obviously it was a big HGV school in my area, and I actually used to see their trucks go past me as a little kid while I was walking along the high street with my mum. So next day she came down to my offices, which had a nice little fancy smart classroom similar to this podcast. We had all the bells and whistles, and we spoke about the history of the business and the deal she had with the other company, Sigma, and she went 140 grand for a business that turned over about 140, maybe 180 from memory. And I went, yep, I'll take that deal, what Mark's already sort of agreed with you. And then using the assets of the business, I asset financed it for a no money down deal. Had no idea what I was doing at the time, to be honest with you. I never even read a book or course or knew it was a thing. Yeah.
What made you look at the assets and the balance sheet and trying to finance it? How did that thought come about?
Well, I got to give credit where credit is due. I learned a lot from my old man. He was in the vehicle logistics game, and he grew companies to 100 trucks, you know, and he was actually restarting that business again because he had 33% of that bigger business, and he had about 15 trucks at that point when he restarted again at 100% ownership. And what he used to do is asset finance these trucks in order to get them in. So I knew about asset finance since sort of growing up, really. So I've heard of that term and how it's done plenty of time. I didn't realise you could asset finance someone else's trucks, I must admit. But when I sort of agreed to deal with Kim, I always speak to my dad as my counsel. He's like a mentor to me, but he's my mentor. And, he said, well, you could actually raise the money through their assets. I was like, okay, that sounds a bit strange.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound right at the time, but...
That other guy missed a trick then, didn't he?
Proper. Yeah, proper. He missed a trick. But he managed to... So once I bought it, and there's a few stories I could say about that business, but once I bought it, the actual former ownership, we had 10 grand in the bank the day before I bought it. The day I bought it was left with zero.
Yeah.
And that was on a Wednesday. I'll never forget this. And Friday the wages were due.
Yeah.
So obviously I'm just saying this shit.
Yeah.
I'm like swearing, worried, stressed, all sorts of things that I think a 22-year-old shouldn't be.
Yeah.
So I had to get the money, 3.5 grand within 2 days. So I actually rented the entire yard out to a skip company to dump all their rubbish in.
Right.
And honestly, it was like a 100-foot pile of rubbish. Like it honestly was like a big bouncy castle full of rubbish. I wouldn't recommend a kid climb up it.
Yeah.
But so he gave me 4 grand. And I was like, yes, got the wages. But obviously all the staff who were actually twice my age, 10, 15, 20 years in the game, like full qualifications, already thought I was an idiot, being a 22-year-old new owner, fresh, wet behind the ears.
Yeah.
That's what they thought. And they was in hysterics. I was like, you've ruined it. You've dumped all this rubbish here. But I wouldn't have paid your wages.
Yeah.
And you would have left. Definitely thought I was an arsehole at that point.
Yeah.
And sometimes as a business owner, you've got to do what's best for business.
Yeah.
The funny story about Sigma, the other guy was going to buy it. And I have to be accurate here because I don't want to get sued. Because Sigma's a great company, I'd said. They actually got a lot of, or tried to get a lot of my former staff members over the period of time. And got various insight knowledge throughout that process. And fair play, business is business. I still grew that company to 850 grand a year. I still had an exit. I still quadrupled the revenue and profits and lived a very good life off it. And I look back now in hindsight and think, it is what it is. So I had that 2.5 years. I'd done the exit. The company I sold it to actually, I don't think they mind me saying this, I've said this a few times, I think they ruined the business.
Yeah.
They actually drove it quite down. They lost a lot of the training courses and accreditations that were needed to run that business.
How do you lose them types of deals? Because it's be with a proper government or be with a...
Well, I sold it to a group of colleges.
Yeah.
And because they ran academically, so they would look at everyone like a kid, a school student, they didn't look at the commercial aspect of it. So they looked at certain accreditations, such as driver CPC, and that comes at every 5-year cycle. So every 5 years, all the drivers in the country and Europe need to redo that qualification. So it's a big revenue driver every 5 years. Outside that 5 years, when it's in the lull of that 5-year cycle, it's not. So when they saw it, they was like, well, this is naff. We don't need this. So they got rid of that.
Well, not realising it was just about to come around the corner again.
In a nutshell, yeah, because they had no one who was from the transport industry running it. They had former school teachers or college teachers running it. So I actually bought it back 2 years later for about £20,000.
How much did you sell it for? Can you say it?
High 6 figures. I can't say exactly, to be honest with you, because they have got strict contracts.
Yeah.
I can say what I bought it for back though. So I bought it back for 20 grand. And this time, in between that 2 years cycle, I wasn't in the business. I learnt more about leverage buyouts and just in general what the whole knack was. So actually, I bought and sold a recovery business, a recruitment business, a fish stall, a music studio. That's why I like all this setup here, because it reminds me of my old studio, all the soundproofing and audio.
So just list them again. Were there the list of businesses that you've bought? Is that right?
Yeah, so there was some in just that period of time. So while I was out of Newcroft, and I've sort of bought that, scaled it, sold it. That was from 2016 to 2018, that 2.5 years roughly. I was in Newcroft. Then post 2018 to about 2020 when we hit COVID. COVID feels like around the corner, but it was a long while ago now, which is weird. So in that break, I brought a vehicle recovery business
Yeah.
for 480 grand, which was called NFR Transport.
Yeah.
Funny enough, I knew the owners for about 10 years previously because they was actually one of my dad's subcontractors. And when my dad stopped doing that industry, half his customers went to NFR. So when I got the keys to NFR, I knew all the customers anyway.
Yeah.
I was like, it's Ben, son, Charlie, how you doing? I ain't seen you in ages. And funny enough, they all still work in these same jobs. I suppose if you work for massive companies like Ford in their senior head office, you don't really want to quit that sort of job, you know. It's a good job, I guess.
Yeah.
And yeah, so they all knew me, lucky enough. And so that was NFR Transport. We actually turned that into a recovery app that failed spectacularly. But I suppose that's not really a merger and acquisition story. That's just Charlie reinvested in the wrong areas. So I've bought and sold that. The recruitment company Match 2 was a really cheap acquisition, actually. That was £6,000. But the next week I made 15 grand out of it simply because some customers who were already my other customers at Newcroft Training tried to bump that company 15 grand. And I saw that, and one of my instructors was one of these recruitment drivers, because they recruit drivers and admin staff, Toby. I turned around to Toby, I said, did this company hire you from Match U2? He went, yeah. I was like, oh, weren't my invoice or job at the time. Now I own the business, I've got to take it on as my responsibility. So I rang up the company, I can't say who, but there was a waste management business in the local area, and I said to them, look, you owe me it was actually 21 grand. I went, you owe me 21 grand. I can give you a CCJ today, or we can just sort it out whatever way you want. And at first, the manager was like, a bit of a young lad who's trying to take the piss out of me or something like that. And I managed to get the owner's number, who's quite a well-off fella. And I said, look, you owe me this money. How much can you pay today? He went, I'll give you 15. I went, great. Oh, here's my bank details. Yeah, I'll take that. And then Match U2 actually, when I got Newcroft back, actually became part of the recruitment arm of that. But they didn't last too long because all the recruitment team left after a year, and I never had any recruitment experience. So, the basis of it, I place someone in your firm, you give me 10 or 20%, or we do temp agency, and I make £1 an hour on the driver. It just wasn't something I had good in-depth knowledge of to run myself. Plus, I was so busy with the training, and that was one of the biggest problems with the training school. I became more of an operator than an owner.
Yeah.
I learned to scale that back as time went on.
Yeah.
But when I got back, and there was a couple more businesses like fish stall and music studio and all sorts of crap. And when I say crap, I mean absolute crap. I'll never ever buy or work in a small business again because...
What do you class as a small business?
So let's say the average salary is 35. A good salary is 80 to 100. Anything that generates around them numbers in profit, I'd consider a small business. Because you might as well get a job. If you're really skilled and qualified, you might as well get a job and save the ag, the payroll stress, the risk stress. I look 40, and I've looked 40 for the last 15 years because of business. I'm lucky I still have my hair in place, just about. And so that's what I consider a small business. Anything that you can get a salary for, in my opinion. There's government metrics for small and micro businesses. I think small's under 10.4 million turnover. But a lot of people who might be doing that wouldn't consider themselves a small business.
No.
So anything you can get a salary for, I'd consider a small business.
Unless there was like a strategic point for doing it, I guess.
Well, this way I suppose adjusted EBITDA comes in, because if you're reinvesting 100 grand a year, then paying yourself 100 grand a year, then it's probably not a small business. If you're reinvesting 100, paying yourself 100, a car on lease for 20, fuel expenses, insurance, family health insurance, and I've done all that. I've had 5 people on the health insurance, payroll sort of thing. Even my missus, bless her, was on the payroll without actually working. You know what I mean? So you can get benefits like that, and that's where you get that adjusted EBITDA number on when you're valuing businesses.
Yeah.
I was buying these businesses, and I went back to Newcroft Training through the college messing it about. But at that time, I was armed with a lot more knowledge on how I wanted to finish with this business. I think when I first bought it, scaled it, and sold it, I was just thinking sales, 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 sales. You know, streamline the costs, get more sales in, and I still think like that today because I think that's a good fundamental setting in any business. But actually, now the second time round, I had an end in mind. Actually, what does this look like in 2 or 3 years, and what does my exit look like? So I actually bought 3 to 4 other training schools, and we built a little group. Not the biggest of groups, but I'd definitely say it was top 10 HGV schools in the country, without a doubt. I could probably name the other 9, to be honest with you. Hopefully, if they ever watch this, I'm happy to value the business and give you a free service, friendly industry service.
Yeah.
So we built that and I sold it last May. And funny enough, it was a bit weird actually because last March I bought a company in Derby and I can safely say this one of my worst acquisitions I've ever had. Like honestly, it put me in hospital. Yeah,
Wow.
it was that bad.
Yeah.
It was that bad. And so there's a company called SGTTL or SG Transport Training and Logistics Limited. And it was a distressed business. They didn't pay their rent for 9 months and other bills that I was aware of. So it turned over 900 grand a year, roughly. And these are rough numbers unless I start getting out my accounts out and start showing you, which I've all got recorded anyway. So if you ever want to see it, I'm happy to show you. So it turned over 900 grand a year. At the time, when they first came to me about 2 years ago, they was making a profit around 250 from memory. And it's through a broker, really nice brokers actually. Not going to recommend them because I'm now in their competition. Really nice broker, and they valued the business at 1.2 million, as some brokers do, and we'll get into that in a bit, like the other valuations. But they valued at 1.2. I went, it's worth 800, right? So I offered 800, and I always try and offer a fair deal when I was a buyer because I always wanted a win-win scenario. I didn't want to like shortchange people when they badmouth me after, and always wanted a fair deal because I knew I had to work with these people in some capacity after, post-acquisition anyway. So I offered 800. They laughed, said, whatever, Charlie, 800's not good. I went, fair enough, left it. 12 months later, or 15 months later, they came back to me January 2024. Said, right, we're ready to do a deal now. I went, great, send me your up-to-date accounts. I'll review them and I'll present you an offer. Gave me some up-to-date accounts and the business drastically changed. I wouldn't say drastically, it was just more the margins have narrowed. It wasn't as profitable as it was first presented to me. And in that period, they didn't pay their rent for 9 months. So I knew there was some fundamental issues in the business, just from a quick overview. So I offered £300,000 at the time, right, which was a bit large considering what was going on. And then I wasn't too keen, even though I made that offer. So we sort of dragged it out, and it got to March, 22nd of March, or sorry, the 20th of March, 2024, and we finally agreed a deal to buy a business for £1, right, and a consultancy agreement with them after, for a separate payment, because the business was quite a high risk, and whilst I thought, oh, okay, I can change this. I've already got loads of HGV schools. Let's give it a whirl. I'm great at marketing the bit because costs per customer acquisition was about £80, and the margin you'd make on that customer is about £1,200 to £1,500. So I knew money for old rope type thing, and you're helping people out, which is most important, like upskilling them, which I love. So I thought, great, I'll take this on, right? And they disclosed debts to me about 120 to 140 grand, which I thought, okay, that's manageable. I can handle that. So March 22nd this year, bought the business for £1.
After offering them,
300 in Jan, and then we got to March, and I was reviewing it again. I said, look, I'm not going to do this because it's actually funny. Well, not funny. They had a statutory demand, like a legal letter, to say you must pay this by then, and I think it was 24 grand roughly, and they're sort of flapping a bit, and I said, look, I don't really want to touch this business with barge pole unless you get these debts sorted. At least give me a half decent business to run with. And they're just flapping around, we ain't got any money, and all this. All right, well, I'll buy it for £1. I'll clear the debts, and you guys can stay on as instructors / consultants, and, we save jobs, we help a community business out, because it was quite a big part of the local community in Derby. So yeah, we agreed that deal. And then the next day I cleared off the statutory demand for 24 grand. So I put another 24 grand of my own money into it. No leverage. There was no leverage to be had with that sort of business because they actually, and I'll explain this in detail in a bit, but so when I originally bought the business, it was like 120 to 140 grand in debt. Turns out it was 260 grand in debt. So he lied about a lot of the debt.
Would there have been any way to find that out other than...
Funny enough, I've got a podcast with a top MMA accountant in a few weeks' time, and we've had this pre-chat. I've spoken to other accountants, and I've done my own financial due diligence quite a lot. And sometimes I do outsource it if it's too big for me to chew or there's not enough time for me to chew on it. But no, not really, because, for instance, in February, they loaned against a funding circle for 26 grand and knocked them, just didn't pay back. And they said that was to pay a VAT bill. They didn't pay that VAT bill. They just paid themselves. So they were essentially just siphoning money out of the business.
Yeah.
And I even found out, and I don't know if the guy is dead or not, but I will just say this, I think he is. They was paying themselves through a person I cannot locate bank account. So a guy called Barry Greenwood, I forget the exact name now, and they were siphoning about £600 a week from this account into theirs to avoid tax or whatever it was. And it turns out they didn't pay their own staff for 2 or 3 months. While when you include all their benefits and all the stuff they was getting out of the business, they was paying them about £1,200 to £1,300 a week, and they're knocking their staff like £500 a week. They owed their apparent best mate, who was a staff member, like 3.5 grand. They owed another guy 2.5 grand. They owed a young girl in the office about £300. And like they used to have this emphasis, oh, we're a family business, it's family, it's family. And like I wouldn't let any of my family starve. You know, I'm one of them people, being a Cockney especially, like you're all about family, you know, and I'm actually quite passionate about my staff and helping people out. And I'd like to think that most people who've ever worked with me think that as well. You know, I've gone out my way for people. And so all these debts and troubles were hidden under the bonnet, should I say. And I probably could have got an external accountant to spot some of these things, but I knew it was a distressed business. I was buying it for £1, so I took the gamble.
Yeah.
You know, and life's about taking that risk sometimes.
Yeah.
And I had it for 8 weeks, this business. And in them 8 weeks, I was constantly getting barraged by the previous owners about, you know, we need paying for our wages for the last 2 months or this and that, and just constantly barraged. Like every day, I'd have to spend an hour or two talking to the previous owner, and he'd accept no responsibility. He was a bit like Teflon. I'd be like, I'll say his name, Kevin, what about this debt that you didn't disclose? And he'd go, and it's your problem now, he'd basically say. And I actually found out through the brokers who sort of were in the middle of this deal that stat demand that I mentioned earlier,
Yeah.
he knew. So what happened was earlier in that March, I went down to Derby. I don't like travelling that regularly anyway. I'm quite a homebody. Even coming here was like a big deal, which I don't mind. Yeah, I'm happy to be here, by the way. Yeah. So I went to Derby on the Monday, and this is before we negotiated the pound deal. And on the Friday before, they received a statutory demand. And just before I'm about to sign the contract for the 300 grand at the time, they go, oh, by the way, we've got this statutory demand for 24 grand. I was like, when did that come? They went, oh, the last working day on Friday, you know, the Friday before this Monday. I went, right. I mean, do you know what this means? They don't know what. I mean, well, this is a legal demand for you to pay them, otherwise they're going to wind up the business. So I was really frustrated because I felt like they was trying to do me over at that point.
Yeah.
So I went back to Essex. It just didn't strop, you know. I was just like, how dare they do that? And then obviously they needed to pay this demand in about a week or two after our event. So that's why I said to them, I'll buy it for £1, you know, because you've already tried to pull this one on me. God knows what else is going to appear out of the woodworks.
Did they cheat to come back to you and ask for payment as well, though, after, like, when you were the owner?
Yeah, I know.
Mad.
Well, I paid them in my 8 weeks about $8,000 additionally through wages, consultancy, hidden costs they didn't disclose. Funny enough, and just the behaviour was outlandish, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And there was a few really minor things, but like there was a Nissan Navara company car that they let me drive while staying up for Derby for 3 weeks, whilst I was trying to get used to the business and help it out. Turns out it weren't bloody MOT'd or taxed or insured. And then I once, towards the end, took their car off the company insurance, their personal car, and they're throwing a strop over it. I'm thinking, well, you let me drive a car 3 weeks uninsured. Didn't mention that it weren't taxed or MOT'd. And now you're throwing a strop because I've took your personal car off the company policy. And then I'll tell you what was the straw that broke the camel's back, because I don't mind my back against the wall and rescuing or turning around distressed business. I sort of enjoy it. As I've got older, I don't think my heart can handle it anymore. Yeah. But the thing that broke the camel's back, and this is my last week there, it's on the Monday. And bear in mind, I before this straw, I was having rows, arguments, nearly brought to tears. I'm not really a crying man, to be honest with you, but there was that much frustration, and especially that you're in a legal, civilised setting, you can't really do much what you probably want to.
Yeah.
Someone like a man to man getting like that much frustration, you can't really deal with it. I think your biological clock wants you to deal with it. I remember one time he barged through my office door, and my dog was there. He barged into my dog with the door and started going, "You crook, you crook," and all this stuff, all because someone who was due to get paid from a bill 6 months ago, before I was even there, was ringing up going, "Oh, I can't get hold of Charlie." Well, there's payment runs. There's now an accountant in the business. I'm not just going to pick up the phone willy-nilly. Like, I want to be scheduled in a call, or at least go through the proper channels, like through the accountant. We'll put it on the age debtors list or creditors and get you paid when the payment runs next due.
Yeah.
Because we're not just going to go, "Oh, pay ya."
Yeah.
Just maybe the old business would do that, or if they didn't pay anyone really, but maybe that's how they acted. But then the thing that broke the camel's back, the straw that broke the camel's back. So on the Monday of my last week, Kevin, the previous owner, stormed in the office like he'd always do. And bear in mind, this guy's like 6'3", ex-military. He's not a tiny old man. He's quite a big boy. I think I would have took him. But he stormed in and said, "Right, if you don't give me back the keys, everyone's going to quit the company." Company mutiny. I was like, "Oh, right." And lucky enough, that's not the first time in my career I ever heard that. I heard that actually 10 years before at Newcroft, when I first brought Newcroft, and I managed that situation. In fact, that company went from the original staff to new staff before I sold it anyway, to my team, so to speak. So I wasn't that jolted by the accusation or the assumption that people would leave because he said so. But I thought I'd go ask everyone anyway. So there was 5 other instructors there and 2 office staff. I said to all the instructors, "Kevin said you're going to leave if I don't give him back the company." And 4 out of 5 said, "No, we just want to work." Like most people, just want to show up, get paid, leave, go home safe,
No drama.
No drama. And one bloke, the guy he owed $3,000 to before I came along and paid that $3,000, his best mate, was like, "Oh, I'll go with Kevin." I was like, "All right, mate." If you really knew what he was like, But then that Monday happened. Tuesday, their daughter-in-law, who was the operations manager, resigns. Just resigns. Doesn't give me notice. And she's been there for like so many years, however long she's been there. Gave us no notice, no handover. And this is their daughter-in-law, so family ties. I kind of get that. And then Thursday, 2 days after that event, the operations assistant, who was their best mate from the chip shop or pub, I don't know how they know each other, but they're mates, hands in a week notice. Which is fine. At least she gave me some notice. I said, "Thank you so much." And she was actually really nice to me throughout the 7 to 8 weeks there. And I even had my partner come up to the business for 2-3 weeks and learn some of the office functions, get to know the team more. And she gave me feedback that the ops assistant was a really nice lady as well. I even got her son a Xbox because her little boy was autistic and the older brother ruined his Xbox. I heard about that story, so I just got them it because I know what it's like being a kid and your toys are getting messed around by your older brother. So yeah, really nice person. She resigned, and I think she resigned because there's so much stress in that building through me and the previous owner going at it.
What was his gripe with you? You've come into the business trying to improve things.
I was like a scapegoat.
Yeah.
You know, that young, brash Essex Cockney kid, he's the reason why I haven't paid any bills for 2 years.
Yeah.
You know, and delusion.
Yeah.
Proper delusion. And I wish I saw the signs earlier and just didn't do it.
Yeah.
Because after 8 weeks, I sold it for £1 to people who tried to do a deal with him to get him to stay on and agree. And that didn't work out, to be honest with you. So they just closed the company. And I actually temporarily closed the company on that Sunday after there's 2 staff left. I temporarily shut the business down because I took what we call memorandum on trade, just so we can restructure the business because I can't run that business remotely from Essex to Derby. We just lost 2 of our key staff. So yeah, I took a memorandum, which is quite funny. The previous owner was not happy. I actually banned him from site at that point, and he broke in with a angle grinder. I even got a little video of him trying to go into the safe, the company safe after, which I kept sending him on WhatsApp to wind him up a bit. And then after my exit from that company, he then started stalking me a bit, like harassing me. And because we have to do this above board, I kind of had to just sit back and see where it was going to go. And eventually I had to get the police involved. And he got warned that you can't harass this person, you know. And he was making statuses and tweets or whatever about me, saying I'm going to sue him, and I sold a business to someone who couldn't run a bath, let alone a company, and all these funny little statements. But yeah, you know, it's weird because even his sister-in-law, who ran a competitive business, and his brother-in-law all agreed with me because they knew what he was like. It was a strange time. Yeah. A really strange time.
It's not that long ago either, is it? Like
no, so that was in May. And then my partner, Sophie, God bless her, she booked me a trip because my birthday's on the 24th of March. So she got me a surprise trip to Barcelona a week after I sort of exited that business. And that was already pre-booked, despite popular belief from Kevin, thought I took the company money and went to... Yeah. Trust me, there was no money to take. Yeah. You know, in fact, that company owes me a lot of money as it stands. Anyway, I'm in Barcelona, and we actually went Ibiza from Barcelona, funny enough. And I didn't know she was pregnant at the time. None of us did. And she was just constantly in bed and not being her usual self. And I'm sitting there, and because of the fallout with the Derby business, I was speaking to a lot of the other top 10 providers in the country about my current business, the other schools. So I eventually agreed to sell to them because I wanted it out. At that point, after all that stress and heartbreak, I was like, I don't actually want to do this anymore. Like, I grew up in transport. I'm not a lover of transport, if that makes sense. Yeah, it does. You know, it's not a passion. It's great business to be in, especially transport education, really good margins compared to traditional haulage and transport. But it's not my passion. It's something that, similar to rugby for me, my dad sort of brought me in with. So yeah, I agreed to sell the group of companies, and that was end of May. And I was on holiday at the beginning of May. And I was sitting there in Ibiza, and my missus flew back home for the weekend. I stayed there for a weekend because literally I was up here in terms of frustration and pressure and stress, you know, from what happened with the Derby thing. And I was thinking, like, well, what do I do next? You know, what do I do? And my lawyer, Ray, I'll give him a shout, Ray Dolben at Mud Up, really great MMA
Is that the one
lawyer. Yeah.
About, yeah.
Honestly, I'd recommend you speak to him. He can talk for England. In fact, he's giving me a lift home later, so I shouldn't say too much. He's come and see the baby. But he has a business where he used to work for solicitor practices, like obviously starting out and training, and then he decided to sort of run his own business and work from home. And I've never really had that sort of business where I work from home and have no staff and have no overheads. I'm so used to renting out 10,000 square foot yards and warehouses, having 50 staff and having massive payrolls at the end of each month, or leveraging, bank debt, or, I'm used to trying to grow and actually always eat last. I remember at some points in my career, I dipped in for the Chinese on the weekend because I paid my staff 15, 20, 25 grand that week or month, whatever it was, and I left with nothing because I've always believed leaders eat last.
Yeah.
So I decided what actually suits me better. I decided to, especially with a baby on the way, I wanted to be around for the kids, which lucky enough I am. I also wanted to use my skill set over the last 14, 10 years, whatever it's been, to good use. And I looked at Ray's model, and I thought, well, Ray, he charges a certain fee under £500,000 transaction or £1 million transaction, but after that threshold, it goes to 1%. And Ray does do a lot of work to, earn that. But now I heard brokers charge 5 to 10%, whatever it is. And I've dealt with a lot of brokers in the UK and Europe, and some are great, some are average, some are shit. And I thought, well, if I'm going to come into an industry, one, how can I disrupt it and make it better for the end user, the clients?
Because it needs to. It needs it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, now it needs to.
It's really bad, and whilst I'm not going to say the names directly, but companies who might sound like KB whatever or Queensbridge are notoriously known, and I've had them sitting in my office before where they overvalue it, like a small business, 4-5x multiplier of EBITDA, of which at the time would be like $1.5 million for my business. I only $250 a year when I was 23, whatever it was. I remember sitting in my office, guy called Craig, and he went, "Oh yeah, that's what your business is worth, and it gets sold within a year. Give me 20 grand plus that up front." And at the time, I didn't have 20 grand. I was like, "Get out, get out my office, mate. Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Get out my office, And then throughout my career buying and selling, obviously I've come across all the other brokers and. Some really nice people, but they usually overvalue to get the client's business listed, and a lot of them are just marketing companies. They'll say, "Matt, your business, your product development business, you make 300 grand a year. We're going to value it 5 multiplier. That's 1.5 million." When the realistic value is probably 2.5 max. 1.5, 2.5, depends on your structure and how your business operates, to be honest with you. There's a lot of different variables. But no business in the small micro business field is worth 5x multiplier. And I actually posted this on LinkedIn the other day, and everyone who disagreed with me were all bloody brokers.
Yeah.
Because they don't like the curtain being pulled back,
And that as well, is that a multiple based on like a 3-year average, 5-year average, or just the last trading year?
Well, it's always good to have averages, because I was even reviewing one set of books the other day where they were break even, and last year was 120 grand profit.
Yeah.
And the broker, the sell side broker, was advising a friend of mine, I only value it on the last year's, and that just doesn't make sense. Do it across the 3.
Yeah.
And obviously you get adjusted as well, and a lot of people, like there's a famous saying by Warren Buffett, like adjusted EBITDA equals bullshit.
Yeah.
And you're right to a degree, because you can manipulate accounts wildly, so you should take caution to that. But you should adjust and add back certain things like director's salary, director's benefits, wife benefits, family, health insurance, fuel, whatever is a genuine add back once they exit the business, what is actually the true cash flow of that business. And I actually don't like using terms like adjusted EBITDA or even net profit, because they're figures that can be wildly manipulated. I always go with SDE, which is seller's discretionary earnings. I think that's the best way to get a true value of a business and a return on investment if you're a buyer. Don't get me wrong, if they're valuing adjusted EBITDA, but I know the SDE is much greater, I'm going to let them run with it, as a buyer. I'll be like, yeah, great, because I know really an extra 50 to 100 grand that you're not considering there. So obviously, depends what side of the table you're at. It's best to keep your mouth stum sometimes. But as a broker myself, the whole point of Vamos is Spanish for let's go, and I want realistic valuations to meet vetted buyers to make a quick turnaround of sales. And the reason why some of these companies are on the marketplace for years is because they got overpriced, poor advice, and then anyone can go talk to them. And as a buyer, I loved it. Don't get me wrong. I used to love playing the game, but as a broker, I'm sort of there to be the neutraliser now. You know, I've got to be fair to both buyer and seller, and you've got to get a win-win deal, because if the seller's not happy or the buyer's not happy, deal ain't happening. Lucky enough with Vamos, we've got solicitors, accountants, finance brokers who all understand, you know, leverage buyouts, management buyouts, you know, just general takeovers. So we can facilitate the deal quite quick. My average from listing to completion is about 2.5 months as it stands today.
Crazy, isn't it?
It's crazy, but it's because by the time I've told someone their actual valuation, i.e. what the price will get sold for, there'll always be a bit of wiggle room. Say, okay, we're going to ask for this price, but the actual price it will probably get sold for is this. But we have to set that expectation first. And if the owner agrees on that's what he wants or she wants on the exit, great. Well, as soon as I've got that, I'm already texting my 50,000 members in business buying groups. I've got this deal on, I'm posting it, you know, and then once I've done that initial bit, I'm then listing it, and I'm already engaging a lot of buyers by the time, you know, sometimes even before the dotted line's signed with me, you know, because if I know it's a good deal, I want to start tooting that out there and getting interest and seeing who's actually going to come to the table. And don't get me wrong, you do get tire kickers. You know, that's also part of my job, is vetting the buyers. And by the way, I hate the term £1 Charlies, because I bought a business for £1 and I am Charlie. But that's not the only reason, because it dismisses the whole point of leverage buyouts. And let's say, you know, your niche is property and there's a bigger property business you want to go buy. No one's going to expect you to have 2 million in your back pocket. Otherwise, you'd be living in Thailand, not buying businesses properly, or Dubai or wherever. So I feel like the £1 Charlie is quite a derogatory term. That's the one. Terrible pronunciation sometimes. For people who are looking just to elevate themselves through business and different levels of wealth. You know, I've done it. I know lots of people have done it. Some cool sellers are bullshitters. I spoke at one guy called Jonathan Jay's event as a guest speaker. He paid me a few grand to go speak. And then a year later, his nurseries all went bust, owing like 3 million in deferred consideration, like payments to sellers. And in the same year, his education company went up £2 million in the bank. You know, and
how did you get in touch with Jonathan?
Through bad luck, really. No. How did I get in touch with him? I think he just heard the story of me doing it when I was young. Someone must have told him. Well, funny, I was meant to have an interview with Piers Linney, because I actually bumped into him on the M4 in traffic. I was like, "You're Piers Linney, you're fucking brilliant." You know, I still need to do that interview with him. We've been meaning to do that for a couple of years now. But I don't know how Jonathan Jay got hold of me now. And he just found me, asked me to do these interviews or podcasts, and then speaking on stage events. And I didn't mind, because to me it was my first ever time doing it, and it was about, I actually looked at the photo of it the other day. It was in 2022, so not long ago. But you know what? After I found out what happened at the Welcome Nurseries group, and I just felt like my name and his name shouldn't go together, you know, because at the time I was buying businesses, and I didn't want people to Google me and go, well, his best mate, you know, has just done so many businesses and staff over, and that's just not who I am as a person. So I need to dissociate myself from him, and he's actually blocked me now because I called him out on LinkedIn over it, you know, because I said I don't want to be associated with this kind of stuff. So I've got to be careful what I say, because he loves suing people. You know, he loves suing people. I don't mind. So it was nice to get paid, you know, to speak on stage, and it was nice to meet some of the community and network through that group. But I actually speak at another group called 5D, which is a guy called D. Ludlow's. Yeah. And I say this all the time to people, because when I was 18, learning about how to buy businesses from my dad and just Googling, I used to type in businesssale.com every single day, by the way, on Google and Gumtree and Facebook and all sorts. Just talk to every business I could, just to talk to them, to get experience when I was little. And with deal makers and 5D, and no offence to the deal makers community, but the 5D community is so much better. And I'm not talking about the people, the type of people. I'm not referencing characters, but in terms of the education you receive.
Oh, really?
Massive difference. Massive difference. So if you go through each program, one will get you very prepared for life buying businesses, and one will give you like a brief overview, you know, and sugarcoat a lot of things. And I was speaking to one guy I know through that other one, and he was like, well, I asked to use his accountant, and he started turning on me and just all weird stuff, where you go to D at 5D, who kindly lets me in and lets me just talk my stuff, like, you know, willy-nilly, because I enjoy talking about it, you know, it's fun. And D's always helping people, but the difference with, I think, D and Jonathan's a really good marketeer.
Yeah, good speaker.
Yeah, good speaker, polished to a degree. Shame if you Google him, you'll see the history, the company history, and that probably is a distraction on what he does. Where D is also a student of the game. So whilst he has a few businesses now, he's got like real estate companies in Dubai, car dealerships, construction companies, and he's the real deal, so to speak. But he's still a student. You'll see him going to American corporate meetings of, you know, the big leagues, learning stuff that even I wouldn't get involved with, like, you know, P ratios, stocks, you know, all really big time stuff, you know. I'll never get into that personally, but until D's a student of the game, and he's really helpful to his students. If a student wanted a solicitor or an accountant, D's like, yeah, you go, mate. And he doesn't even mind me recommending my people, because he just wants to see people be successful.
Yeah. And
out of the two groups, in the short space I've seen them both, I've seen more success out of 5D, and even the novices become literary experts on the subject within 3 to 6 months, compared to the other one where some just don't have a clue. Yeah. You know, and I feel really bad for people who spend a lot of money. Like, I've never spent anything on education like that. Yeah. It's a lot of money. To me, I'm always going to think 10 grand's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And you spend that much money and you want to learn something quite in depth and be able to do the thing they're offering. And whilst it's quite a bad catchphrase, learn how to buy a business, no money down, it can happen, it does happen. And the detractors, like the Clinton Lees out there, if you know, heard of them.
No.
Oh, another guy's blocked me. They all seem to block me. And Mike Winnett, if you've ever seen him, he's blocked me.
Why has he blocked you? I didn't think he was on that side of the
you know what it is? Because he hates a debate. He hates a public debate, Mike. I think because he didn't know I was. I don't expect him to, but I remember commenting on something. He's like, well, when you've sold a business, come back to me. I went, I've sold loads. What's your point? Like, does that make you a bigger man or something? Like,
I thought he was on the side of like calling our leads fake. Or like,
yeah, he does that entrepreneur thing, which I found quite entertaining. That's where I found him when I saw that. No, Mike blocked me. One, because we had a few debates on LinkedIn, and he don't like being questioned. You know, don't know if it's an ego thing or whatever it is. I don't mind being wrong. You know, if you teach me or prove I'm wrong, I'm like, wow, great. Yeah. Like, I get to learn something here. I don't mind being proved wrong. My missus or my dad prove me wrong every other day, so I've got no issue telling me I'm wrong. But Mike seemed to have that issue. But I think the straw that broke the camel's back, and half my LinkedIn I do use for comical, humorous reasons, so don't take me too seriously on there, because I do, especially when I wasn't a broker, I was spouting some shit. Yeah. And one of the things I put, I think I put Andrew Tate with a greater sign, Mike Winnett. And I also put like stuff like James Sinclair, greatest sign, Jonathan J. Yeah, in terms of, I don't know why I put that with the Mike Winnett Andrew Tate one. I don't know why. And I think he blocked me from that.
Yeah.
I think he blocked me from that. I don't actually agree with that statement, by the way. It's just, I think I was on a wind up.
Yeah, that's fair enough. It's social media, isn't it?
It is what it is.
I've got a few questions for you. So people who are listening, they might have heard a few sayings that they might not be aware of. So LBO, leverage buyout, could you just explain sort of what that means and some of the ways that you've used it?
With leverage buyouts, there's two main ones. There's a management buy-in or a management buyout. A management buy-in is when external people like you or me being buyers who are outside the company come into the business. A management buyout is when internal staff buy the business. Now the leverage buyout part, essentially people will raise monies against the business, so their asset list, their creditors or debtors, creative financing. It's actually really, really popular in America because they got this thing called the SBA loan where the government will back 80 or 70% of it. And my friend Michael Steinberg runs the biggest brokers in America, and he's flying because the government are backing businesses out there, unlike the UK, unfortunately. A leverage buyout essentially, so let's say you own this building or podcast building, let's say, and you've got an asset, a building worth 500 grand, you've got equipment here worth 50 grand, and your business makes 50 or 100 grand a year, and we agree a certain price. And usually what a management buy-in will do is structure a deal where you have initial consideration, the first payment up front, and then deferred consideration, which is the monies that are paid in quarterly, yearly, monthly, depending on what the structure of the deal is, over a certain period of time, 2, 3, 5 years usually. And what they'll do to get you the first payment, especially if someone like me when I was 22 had zero money, they would raise the money against the business. So let's say with the Newcroft deal like we spoke earlier, I raised £120,000 from the trucks to buy them out. I actually lent another 20 off another private investor to complete the 140 because I had no deferred consideration. It was just the money up front, and that's all I knew really. I was like, yep, great, I own it now. But yeah, an LBO is essentially a leverage buyout. You're leveraging the assets of the business to buy it out, whether it's an MBO or an MBI, like I said earlier. So there's different teams who can do it.
Yeah. So, and then SDE as well?
Yeah, so this is more of an American term, but
I've heard the Americans speak about this.
Yeah, Americans prefer it, but I'm bringing it to the UK, trademarking it for UK, just want to put it out there, Vamos trademark, sellers' discretionary earnings. So in most lifestyle businesses, which 90% of businesses are, you know, I've always had lifestyle businesses because they improve my lifestyle. Yeah. Funny that. And let's say, just give an example, my own life, let's say I paid myself the 12,750 tax allowance a year, I think it is, I have to double check. Yeah. And then dividends and pension, and then fuel, car insurance, and I've got my partners on the health insurance, car insurance. Let's say, I don't know, even just something really silly, like a weekly CAF bill that I happen to put through the business, and it's staff, food or entertainment. That's it. Entertainment, nights out. You know, I take myself on holiday. I film myself a podcast talking about business. I put it through as an expense on the business. So all these silly things. So you would calculate all these additional costs to the business that only the business owner makes the business incur, and figure out what the seller's discretionary earnings are from that. Similar to ad backs. So
I was about to say,
yeah, very similar to ad backs. And I even had one company, which I can't say too much about because we will buy it one day. But I'll give you some brief. So it's actually a business that runs film location settings, and they turn over about 3.5 million a year and net profit 1.2. Yeah, it's good business, and I've actually doing that. My lawyer Ray, funny enough, who brought me onto the deal, and I'll probably go into that in a bit more depth another day when we actually do it. And one of the bills in the accounts I saw was 80 grand for financial advice. I went, what the hell is that at the time? This is like 2 years ago when we first started talking to the business. I went, what the hell is that? And the broker stood up and went, oh, that's my fees, my retainer fees. I know, yeah. It's a good industry being a broker. Yeah. I'll never take retainer fees, by the way.
Is that every single month he's on the market or whatever, he's getting a retainer?
Yeah, he was getting like 10, 12 grand a month. But obviously, when the business is sold, that goes back on the ad backs.
Yeah.
So you can actually include that as part of the seller's discretionary earnings as well, because the seller's taking that money for their own benefit, i.e. they're going to look to sell the business for their own benefit. So you can add that into SDE or adjusted EBITDA add backs. The reason why I don't like adjusted EBITDA, I prefer SDE, seller's discretionary earnings, is simply because adjusted EBITDA is a manipulative figure made up by accountants, and they'll add depreciation, amortization, and let's say I buy a truck for 50 grand, and you can do two things. You can either reduce it by 25% a year or 10% a year.
Yeah.
Even though I know them trucks last for 20 years and it should actually be about 5% a year if it was a realistic thing. So this adjusted that back just because you've depreciated your truck by 25% doesn't mean you should add an extra 10 grand on the EBITDA, because that's paper money.
Yeah.
It's not real.
Yeah, it's not real.
It's not real, you know, and that's, I think, why Warren Buffett says adjusted EBITDA is bullshit.
Yeah.
So that's why I go with SDE, because then I know. You can also call it cash flow, I suppose, but the problem is cash flow. The business might have a lot of capex costs, like you might be reinvesting to either grow, get more, like in my instance, training courses or vehicles like recovery trucks or learner trucks, HGV trucks. So yeah, I don't look at cash flow because cash flow can be used differently because of capex reasons. But yeah, SDE, I think it's the golden. You know, especially as a buyer, you want to know exactly what they're getting out of the business. And I had one client who got sold about a week or two ago now. They found out HGV training school, and I knew him from the industry, lucky enough. But he on his books was recording 90 to 100 grand a year profits. But he was actually taking out an additional 140 in cash. Yeah, obviously there's a good reason why I can't say it is, because I know the HMRC got blowing smoke up his arse. Yeah. But his SDE was actually 240, not the 90 he was declaring. Yeah. Obviously we proved it through tests and fuel, and there is ways, because obviously there are cash businesses out there like a laundrette. You know, you prove a laundrette's income by their electrical readings and their use and their regular maintenance schedule, or if it's a CAF, you look at their stock bills, like their food order. You know, there's ways to get that true value, and you want to find out the SD, because, and this is one of the problems we had with that business, because he only recorded 90, the buyers were valued at 90, but he was like saying, well, even at 2.5 multiplier, that's a year's profit, you know, in his head. So we had to sort of, unfortunately, get to a happy medium, which he was happy with, because he was retiring, he made loads of money in his career, he's very well off, you know, so he that wasn't the big deal for him, he had lots and lots of money. But yeah, had to get the SDE we had to show that value to the potential buyers as well, by proving the test bookings and the fuel usage and other things, just to prove that it was making that, you know, it wasn't recorded. Yeah. So I think SDE is one of the best numbers to value business on.
And then, you know, before we sort of move into the business broker stuff, what would you do differently through that period of, you know, operating, buying and growing businesses? Do you ever look back and think, I would do this next time? Or when I go into the next sort of venture, this is what I'm going to do?
Yeah, definitely. I would have been more ruthless. I would have definitely been more ruthless.
With staff or with customers?
With life and staff and things in general. So like, and this isn't like a hidden secret, you know, when I was a younger man earning 80, 90 grand a month, whatever it was, I was gambling, drinking, holidaying, womanising, you know. I was a bit of an arsehole, to be honest with you. You know, now I'm sober, settled down family man, and yeah, I think from not being on form like I am in today's version of myself, I allowed these silly little things to distract me, where I could have just grown a much bigger business with more money and had bigger exits, you know. So I would have been ruthless in my approach to business. I used to look at it as more like my pocket money, you know, like it's a lifestyle business. Oh, we earned 10 grand this week. I'll use 9, go down to the casino, put it on red. Terrible habits. And I would say to any young business owner is your business is only as good as you are as a person.
100%.
Like, without a doubt, you know, and I think I was lucky that I had success young, but unlucky in what it did to me as a person. So I would change how more ruthless I was, just in my approach to business and in life, and also, yeah, with staff and dealing with stakeholders and people I was buying businesses from or people I employed. I wish I was more ruthless, because I'm quite kind-hearted as a person. Like, if you need a hand, I'm one of the first people there. You know, I want to help people. A lot of empathy for people, you know, and even if people lied or manipulated their story or tried to pull on my heartstrings, I was quite a sap. You know, I was like, you know. I remember once a lady who was the operations manager at Newcroft. She rescued a horse called Red, the red-looking horse thing. I'm not into horses myself, but I ended up paying for the horse's passport and some vet bills, just to try and show her, like, you know, I'm not all bad.
Yeah.
You know, I'm actually a nice guy underneath the business persona. You know, I'm a real person. But then that lady, when she left the business after 2 or 3 years, whatever it was, she went to my competitors, Sigma, and gave them all my diary and customer lists. I only found that actually 2 years ago when I interviewed someone else who used to work at Sigma. That happened. I was like, crazy.
Yeah.
And I'll never not be nice to people, even though I've had people screw me over in that sense. I think it's always good to practice being nice and just be a genuine person.
Good karma, isn't it? Like, that's what I was thinking about.
Definitely good karma, yeah. But I would be more ruthless. I know it sounds... I think you've got to be firm but fair in life. You know, shake people's hand, look them in the eye, be a proper gentleman. But then if someone's stepping on your toes, get them fuck off your toes, wipe the toe, maybe kick them back with it, if need be. I think it's a hard balance.
Yeah.
It's a hard balance. So, yeah, I would be more ruthless. Would I change anything other than being the ruthless part? Probably not, because I'm still fairly young.
Yeah.
And I've had all this experience,
Hell of a lot of
you know,
experience,
and certain things I can't even say on a podcast. You know, I've had some of the wildest experiences in life, and they've moulded me as the man I am today, you know. So I wouldn't really change much, but I would. There are times I think, like, you've took me for a sap, and I wish I just went, you know, I wish I just went for the kill, so to speak. It is what it is. You can't really change nothing. I don't try to live in the past. You know, I try and live here and now. I don't try to live in the future either, because nothing's promised, is it? Tomorrow's not promised.
Yeah.
But no, not really.
Yeah, that's good. So, as we move into sort of this next part of your chapter and career, like you said, it's an industry which needs disruption, doesn't it? The way it's done just does not make any sense at all, in terms of the brokers will sign, the brokers make money for signing people up, not selling it. Businesses. It's crazy.
It is crazy.
So you mentioned like buying groups and like how you. So first of all, I mean, how are you getting in front of sellers to like sell their business?
Well, it's funny actually, because after speaking at all these business buying groups, I hear all these tricks and secrets, like sending letters out, and I've never once ever sent a letter out in my life. But apparently that's the most popular thing to do. Get a database of your target audience, the industry, age demographic, and send these letters out. Yeah. When I was running big businesses, I'd get like 20 letters a day. And if they weren't a brown letter from HMRC or a cheque from one of my customers, all the rest would go in the bin. And I used to get them all, even from the brokers like Knightsbridge, KBS, you know, Starling,
so that's
Intelligent.
How they're doing it, the bigger players.
Oh yeah, that's where the buying clubs find out how the brokers do it. But I don't do that. I do not send a letter. Funny enough, I've recently just moved to one of the poshest neighbourhoods in the country. It got voted in, and all the houses are worth like over $1.5 million. So I'm actually going to drop my neighbours a quick letter, say, "Oh, I'm your new neighbour. I'm also a business broker," because the likelihood of them or having someone in their family own a business, yeah. But that'll be my first ever letter thing I've ever done, and that's what a lot of brokers and business buying people get taught. The letter thing. So it's a multiple thing. So at the moment, when I was a buyer, it used to be because I tried to represent as an industry figurehead, like a focal point. So I'd get to know the other owners, and the average age of HGV training business owner is 55 plus. And even if I was back in that game today, I'd be one of the youngest owners there by decades. You know, so I was always quite well known as being this young chap who owned Newcroft. And bear in mind, Newcroft's older than me.
Yeah.
You know, so I was quite well known. And then when I was in the vehicle recovery market, I was quite known through my dad because he was massive back in the day in the 90s in that industry. So you'd say I was Ben Norton's son. So like, I think being known and speaking at events and networking, just being known and let people know you're open to buy is one of the key things. Like if I was in the property game or construction, I'd be at all the events, I'd be getting to know all the owners, even looking for mentors. Like there might be another bloke or lady who does what you do exactly, has a much bigger business, and just ring them up and ask for advice. In fact, if I never rang my competitor Mark at Sigma, I'd never have bought Newcroft. Yeah. I was ringing them up for advice. Yeah. You know? But as a broker, how I get my leads and new clients is one, from my previous industry experience. Two, LinkedIn. You probably see me just post a lot on LinkedIn. And I made that decision actually from the start of this year to just post on LinkedIn, just constantly post, because one of the things I'm doing with Vamos, instead of me chucking 100 or 300 grand into the business to build a really cool and big business from external funding, like my own personal pocket, I actually wanted to self-fund the business from its own resources. So the first £1,000 I got back in November for selling a sunbed shop, I know, yeah. I used that money to actually sign up for businessforsale.com and WriteBiz as a broker, because you got paid to be on them platforms. I used that money to get my business cards and start a little website, a little ClickFunnels website, which I've now upgraded to a much better website, www.vamosbusiness.com. Just got to say.
UK.
That's it.
Yeah.
And then about 6 weeks ago, a client paid me $7,500 for completing the sale of their business. And I paid myself a little bit because it was about time to. But I put $4,000 into the business. And with that $4,000, I'm going to start Facebook advertising and various other lead generation channels. Yeah. So I wanted to self-fund this out the own businesses, profits and invoices, and really build it step by step. A bit egotistical because I could have just shoved loads of money into it and off we went and hired people, started advertising from day one. But I wanted to learn step by step the industry a bit more. Yeah. I wanted to fall over. I wanted to pick myself back up again. And it'd be nice to say in 10 years' time if I exit this business, because I am building to exit, because my biggest competitor is a publicly listed company.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, so there is a lot of room in this particular field to grow and expand and hopefully exit. So I do have a 10-year goal to exit. But it'd be nice for me to say, actually, I built that from scratch and sold for quite a high multiplier, or big exit, should I say.
What are they buying at that point? I mean, so in terms of building to sell, what does that look like and what does that mean?
So something I didn't understand when I first started doing business, I just thought every month, money in, money out, and the rest is mine. Like I said earlier about the debauchery I was up to when I was a young adult. So that's what I used to think. And now it gets to a stage where you think, actually, why am I doing this? You know, what is the end goal here? Because you shouldn't really just do stuff for the sake of it. You should have an end in mind. And if your end is in 20 years, this business is going to run without me, but pay my pension a lot more than an actual government pension would be, great. Yeah, no problem with that. I know people who do that for a living. But if one thing I'm doing now is the build sell pathway. So in 5, probably 10 years, to be honest with you, I'll have a group of company that's a financial services company, because that's what business brokering is, merger and acquisitions advisory. We'll have solicitor practice, accountancy firms, R&D tax specialists, strategic buyers into the group. Yeah. And hopefully do exit for quite a lot of money.
Is that what the bigger players do? They all got their own...
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so I was actually reading K3 Capital Group, who owns KBS and Knightsbridge, their financial report for the year 2022. And they turn over 116 million a year, and I think 56 million of that is through business sales services, but not all of that is selling a business. Some of that's restructuring services, which was like a large chunk, like 60% of that particular thing. But in the K3 Capital Group, and sorry if I've misquoted some of this because I can't remember exactly word for word, but they've got KBS Corporate, Knights Finance, Knightsbridge, Quantama, which was an Irish tax specialist they brought out a couple of years ago, big firm, and I think they've got 9 businesses that are part of the K3 Capital Group. And because they're a publicly listed company, you can read all their reports, and it's great for someone like me. It's great read. So they do a lot of things. Things they don't do is have their own solicitors, for instance, but they do have a finance arm. So if you was being a leveraged buyer, no money down specialist, you can go to them. And this is what I find quite weird about their bigger arm, KBC. They hate the leveraged buyers, but then they have a finance firm to facilitate. So it all goes beyond my reckoning sometimes. I think personally, if I was the MD there, shout out John Rigby, by the way, who is the MD there, I would actually bring that ecosystem a bit more closer and say, actually, if you do need finance for this business, which they have on the end of their emails for Knightsbridge, but they don't have it for KBC, if you do want finance, if you need to raise finance to buy this business, here's our contact details, because all the money circulates in that ecosystem. Rather than outsourcing it to another finance provider, they have it all in-house. Yeah. I'm sure they'll get around to that at some point. You know, they're definitely a lot more smarter and experienced people than I am in that particular field. But with what Vamos is, that's different to traditional brokers and disrupting the industry. We are just about quick, realistic transactions. We want win-win deals, we want quick deals. We're not going to charge you an arm and a leg just to get your business on with us. We're more commission structures, so our job, don't get me wrong, we do charge a little bit up front, and I'm happy to say the price here, we charge anything from £1,000 to £5,000 up front, with a 2% to 8% on the back end, depending which option you go for. And that money up front, bear in mind, it costs me about £200 a month to list a business. And it hasn't happened yet, touch wood, but let's say your business takes 6 months to sell. That's £1,200 out my pocket.
Which is not uncommon at all, is it? For 6 months to sell, that's actually really quick if you look at...
Yeah, that is quick. And, you know, in my buying career, I've bought businesses in a day, a week, 3 months, 6 months, 18 months. Yeah. You know, so it can variable. But the thing I highlighted why it takes so long is because not only the overpriced valuations, that's a big issue, big issue, but also the due diligence part. Yeah. So when I sign a client on, I kind of preempt them on all the due diligence. I say, let's get you a finance sorted. Let me speak to your accountant. Is this right? Is this right? Because I know what buyers are going to ask and look for. So I get that all ready. And then by the time they're ready, by the time a potential buyer sits down, they're actually quite impressed. Like, oh, you've got all this in place. You know, that's part of the service as well, make sure it's ready to sell. Whilst I'm not a business consultant or a growth consultant or a turnaround consultant, I have to make sure they're ready to sell. Because what's the point?
Exactly, yeah.
You know, what's the point? Like, I'm not here to waste your time or mine, you know, so let's make sure it's ready to sell. Let's make sure your house is in order. Have you got management accounts? Is your accountant ready to give me them? Why not? You know, and I go through a lot of the buying pains before the buyer even meets the seller. Yeah. I think that helps the due diligence and the speed of transaction as well. Yes, I'd like to think I'm changing the industry, business by business. Business by business.
I mean, some of the brokers I've dealt with, like, they've come out of university. Yeah. And, like, you're trying to have a conversation with them. They've never been in business before, but they've done a degree. Yeah. And you're like, they're just not on the same page.
So, most brokers, and not all, because some do have real world experience, but the ones who work for the bigger companies, they're either ex-car salesmen, ex-estate agents, or graduates from finance or business degrees. And the car salesmen and estate agents are great at talk and the gift of the gab, but won't really understand business, like in terms of running an entire operation and capex or overheads, and they just will never have lived that life, right? And then on the other hand, you've got the finance grads who might understand all the theory behind it. You know, I've got a friend, Asaya, who recently passed, well, not recently, a few years ago, had a finance degree. Then he wanted to be a data analyst in London. And God bless him, I love him to pieces, but he ain't got a clue about running business because he's never been there.
Yeah.
You know, but he's got all the theory. But same way with these new graduate brokers, got all the theory, have no idea, can't even talk to people properly. You know, they just ain't got a clue. So, but it's hard. It's a really niche thing that me and you do. Even just running businesses, let alone buying or selling businesses.
Yeah.
It's so niche. Yeah. It's the niche of niche. And I fell into it sort of by mistake. And I learned to love it over time. And some consider me an expert. I don't particularly. But, it's such a niche thing. And it's like being a forester, someone who plants and cuts trees in the hills of Wales, which my cousin Barn actually does. Such a rare thing. You know, you don't hear people come out of school, I want to be a forestry person, or I want to be a merger and acquisition consultant. It's so niche and rare. Yeah, it's not like a typical route like a doctor or a lawyer or whatever it be.
Also, I was speaking to an M&A accountant locally. I think there's only a few do it locally, and he was saying those types of jobs go to like the private school people anywhere. So it's like if you go through the public school, like, you know, a lot of us do, you don't get to even understand that world anyway, because, you know, it's not advertised here. It's for like the private school kids and dads who understand it and stuff. Yeah,
and I was quite lucky when I come from generations of business owners, and some had really good success, some had really bad luck. You know, my great-granddad owned a company called Norton buckets. That was really successful. And then my granddad Bruce, my great-granddad Vic had that company, really successful. My granddad Bruce used that money, the family money, to buy 3 container ships. Didn't insure them. 2 of them sunk in the first week. So then my dad, Ben, grew up poor. When he met my mum in Stratford in 1990, he only had the clothes on his back. Lucky enough for him, though, he had a scholarship to private school, like a free pass. And it was kind of weird for him being the poor kid amongst all these rich kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is.
Did he get a spot, or what was the situation there? How come he got the private school?
Just for being smart.
Yeah, just good.
Yeah, something I wouldn't understand. Him and his brother, my Uncle Sam, who's actually a vicar now. Whatever. But him and Sam managed to get a scholarship, a free, all paid for scholarship to a private school called Bishop Stortford, in Bishop Stortford, basically because they're intelligence. So yeah, quite lucky really, considering they both were born and grew up on a boat, like a barge. As my dad said, he was a water pikey.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say that, it's actually an offensive term.
Yeah.
But a water traveller. So yeah, he done that, got all this great education, made some really good connections. He's still friends with today. And then at 18, he's just finished the 6th form part of that scholarship because it was secondary and 6th form boarding school.
Yeah.
At 18, in the 80s or 70s, whatever it was, he turns around and decides to become a doorman in East London. As you do. As you do.
Yeah.
So my dad's really book smart and street smart.
As well.
Yeah, he's got quite a best of both worlds.
You don't often see that, do you?
No, you don't.
It's quite rare, that.
Yeah, it is quite rare, and he's just constantly done the most for the family and built businesses, and he started from a standing start to actually doing something quite well. And actually, when we was 13, we went from being in Stratford, East London, to moving in Hornchurch, like on the border of London, Essex, from a small house to a medium house to a decent sized house by the time I was 13. Like, we moved like 14 times by the time I was 13.
Really?
Yeah. We moved a lot as a kid. Yeah, definitely. But you know what it was? So my first place was in Brick Lane, where the famous bagel shop is, on the corner in a flat there. And then we moved to Hornchurch when I was about 1 or 2. And then they played the property market, you know, to get up and up and up, you know, sort of like a buy, refurbish, sell.
Yeah.
And I was playing that game. And I eventually got a big house by the time I was 13. But then my dad's company, he was 33% shareholder, got robbed for 100 grand by the accountant, and they done vehicle logistics, and they crashed an Aston Martin in Monaco in a lamppost, but it was off the truck, so the insurance company wouldn't insure it because it was off the truck. So facing them two big bills, they started to close down. So from that point, my dad actually sold the big house, and we moved to quite a poor area called Harold Hill, which is like, you don't want to go there.
Yeah, yeah. Is that still Essex or London, that?
Yeah, it's like on the border as well of London, Essex. I think they call it London nowadays, but in my time it was definitely Essex. But
Yeah.
poverty.
Yeah.
And we rented a little house there, and my dad sold the big house to fund his own vehicle logistics company. And he grew that from a standing start to like 3 million a year turnover, and we managed to get back on our feet again. And the story works out all good in the end. But I've seen like the ups and downs of entrepreneurship and being a business owner. Him leaving the house at 6 a.m, not coming home to 8 p.m, taking all the phone calls over dinner. I've seen what it can do to people, like the stresses of entrepreneurship. Especially when you try to raise a family with 2 boys in it, you know.
Yeah.
And that's really one of the reasons I got into business, actually, because all I wanted to do was help my parents out.
Yeah.
And I thought that was the best route. All I wanted to do was make sure my family are safe, secure, and don't have to worry again about money.
Yeah.
And yeah, we do all right now. Don't get me wrong, we do fine. But
Has he been the biggest impact on your life, your dad?
yeah,
Yeah.
him and my mum,
Yeah.
without a doubt. When my dad's got that book and street smart thing, my mum's just pure Cockney.
Is she?
Yeah. She proper a Cockney lady. Like, and I love her for it. But she, my mum, she's brilliant. Like, she's brilliant, right? But she's also kind of OCD. Like, she's on it like a bonnet.
Yeah.
And they both had such great work ethic growing up. So when I was growing up, my dad was a truck driver, and then my mum would clean the rich houses in the morning and sell Cadbury's chocolate to off licenses in the afternoons.
Really?
Yeah, so, and then she'd be raising 2 boys as well.
Yeah.
And even now, my mum's like 56. I hope I got that right.
Yeah.
She's 56, and she still is a workaholic. You know, she doesn't actually get paid work.
Yeah.
She's got 2 grandkids, well actually 3 with my newborn now, but the 2 grandkids she looks after. She's always whipping me and my brother into shape where she can. She's always helping my nan out, her mum or her sister, and she's just everywhere. She's everywhere, my mum. It's quite funny actually. And I'll tell you what, if any bloke or business owner could match her ethic, you'd be a billionaire. Honestly, you would. She's got crazy work ethic. She's constantly on it. She doesn't stop, my mum. Yeah. Does not stop.
Would you ever franchise Vamos? What would you do now?
Funny enough, some business brokers do. Like there's Transworld, the Business Partnership is another franchise sort of one. Even Michael Steinberg in America, Hedgestone Advisors, he has like a sort of franchise sort of model. You pay $2,000 and £200 a month to be a part of his crew.
Did you ever consider doing that before you set up, or did you?
No, see, it's funny actually, because I once only bought 5 Subway franchises. Yeah. And this I was like 26 or something like that a few years back, and I found more about franchises, and I thought I'd be like Shaquille O'Neal, have all these franchises, make all that money, and I realised how much you pay to the franchisor. Like, it's so much. It is so much, and whilst it's great being the central franchisor, it's not great being the franchisee, because you're paying so much royalties or marketing or, in Subway's case, food, production costs. With Vamos, no, I wouldn't franchise it, to be honest with you. I work with people, I've said to people that I'm happy to split my fees with you if you can recommend me someone. I would like to grow one day. Obviously, I've got a 10-year plan to grow, but I also want to be able to give a new employee or a new self-employed person the tools to win. Because there's no point if you come on even as a franchisee and I ain't got it all together or the tools to teach you to win. Yeah. There's no point. I'm letting you down at that point. I don't want to let people down. But I wouldn't franchise it, no. But I definitely would work in partnership with people. I wouldn't expect people to pay me to be a partner. if that makes sense. You know, if you've got the skills and you want to do this, I'm happy to teach you. You come under the Vamos banner. I get you all the contracts, all the support, because I've got the systems. Something you're not going to do is replicate my experience, my systems, or my connections. Yeah, and there's no point franchising it. You know, but if you want to come as a partner, great. You know, I've got a few people in the background who are like silent partners, not in terms of investment or stakeholders, just people like me and you who are in the business buying market, who have had deals they don't particularly want, and as another source of revenue, they recommend them to me. It's a win-win at the end of the day. Yeah.
You've got a nice pipeline of deals. Are you happy with the progress so far and where it's at?
Yeah, all in all. So obviously I had birth my daughter in January, and so I had 2 major delays with the business. So I set up the limited company last June. I didn't do anything for the first 4 or 5 months. I just sat there with the limited company, did nothing. Because I had a few good consultancies that were paying me good money at the time, and they still do, don't they?
Doing what?
Alcohol. Yeah. Alcohol manufacturing in particular, like, you know.
What do you do for them though?
So I basically help with all their compliance and also help advise them on MMA acquisitions. So one company does about 5 million bottles a month of alcohol, all from wine to vodka to rum. And I just help them out a lot, to be honest with you. And it don't really take much of my time, but because they was paying me so well, I put my time into it. You know, and then I sat back after my initial help and realised I can manage it on a weekly or monthly basis. I said, actually, what do I want to do again? And it was Vamos. Vamos kept coming back to me in my head. So I probably started the business, I'd say September, October, beginning of October. So I started in October, sold my first business in end of November, and that's when I got that first £1,000 for the Sunbed shop. Thank you, Monica and Ryan, as well, for trusting me with your business, you know, because that's brilliant. Someone actually giving you that trust to help them out.
Yeah.
So I used that £1,000, and I actually, because one of my biggest problems was, I'm okay at valuing a business. I'm really good at that, actually. I've even got qualifications to match it now, because I've done some retraining to get qualified, not just from experience. Really good at valuing, really good at talking to business owners, really good at getting clients on board. But then the problem where I struggled was all the admin behind it. So writing up information random, storing it in a data room, all these things that I've seen done from the outside, but I've never been inside doing it. And that's one of the reasons why I wouldn't franchise it, because I'm still learning these little intricacies of running a brokerage. So I brought a CRM software specially designed for business brokers, and that, and that's interlinked to my website. So if you sign on as a buyer, they send you the NDA from my website. You go into the portal. Suddenly, I've got you in my CRM as Matt Alder, business buyer in these particular industries. And every time I get a business in that industry, it'll notify you. Perfect. Really cool system. Really, really cool. So that was a delay. So that took 3 weeks to build and then implement into the business, and that was actually at the beginning of December. And to be honest, the website only went live again a week ago. So it took 7 to 8 weeks of that being sorted. And then I had the birth of my child, took me out the game for 2 weeks in Jan. So I've only really had 2.5, 3 months of solidly hitting the business brokerage.
Yeah, I mean, with a newborn, it's a lot longer than 2 weeks, you know, like to get used to it. Is it your first? Yeah. I think I'm just getting over it now, and my little girl's nearly 1. Yeah. I'm not saying getting over it. It's like, because I sold my business in February. She was born in the March.
Good timing.
Yeah, the sleep is just like crazy. Yeah. How old is your little girl?
She is 3.5 weeks.
3.5 weeks.
Yeah, very, very little, bless her. The fact that I'm even here is a bit cheeky, but I've got a great supportive partner, and we actually do it in shifts. So I usually take her from midday to like 2, 3 a.m, the baby, and then I wake my missus up at 2, 3 a.m. There you go. Like last,
I remember those days.
Well, last night, her name's Margot, my daughter, and she was throwing up like first time, not just spitting up the milk, but proper like
reflux.
yeah, proper bad, and like even smelt like sick. I was like, I was thinking,
What do you do? Yeah.
well, you know, she had a tummy ache for the last couple of hours, giving out wind a lot, and I think that was just the reflux, and she's fine now. You know, she's absolutely fine. But obviously being a newborn dad, you're like,
Yeah.
shit bollocks, you know, what do I do? Especially when it's at like, when everyone else is asleep and you're the only one there, you're like, bugger.
Yeah.
But she was all right in the end. She's at the beach with mum right now,
Nice.
walking with her new friend who's also newborn.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so they're having time of their lives at the moment.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's cool being a dad. I've always wanted to be a dad, funny enough. Even when I was much younger, doing the debauchery I was speaking about earlier, I knew in the back of my head I always wanted to be a dad because I got so much admiration for my parents.
Yeah.
My grandparents are still alive, and the ones who were alive when I was younger. I'm a really big family man, and even my niece and nephew, I love them to pieces, you know. So I always wanted to have my own little crew, my own little family, and don't get me wrong, after that pregnancy and birth, and the birth went really well, by the way. Really well, very quick as well. Weirdly enough, apparently it goes much longer on average, but she was like 3 hours.
That's really good.
Yeah, really quick. But she's an ex-gymnast, she's fit as a fiddle.
Yeah.
You know, ever since I've known her, she's been in gym at 5 a.m.
Yeah.
on the dot. And hopefully we have more kids. Yeah, that's the aim. But after that experience, I think we're going to let that emotion and thought about that experience die down. And then I think she wants more kids as well, to be fair. We've always spoke about it, and we've been together, we've known each other about 5 years and been officially together about 3 years now. Our anniversary's actually this month, 3rd anniversary. So, yeah, it's great being a dad, though, and it's great being with the right partner as well. I think that's always key. You know, 'cause some of my exes were absolute psychos, to be honest with you, and I can't imagine having kids with them people, but when you find the right person, you know, it's kind of like magical. You know, you found the right partner, supportive, compassionate, your yin to your yang, so to speak, and you have a kid, and it's like the best feeling ever.
It is. It is. I mean, I thought it was really difficult to manage a newborn with a baby, though, because, like, you know, sometimes I'd say get home at, say, 5, I'd have a bit of tea, then I'd work till, like, 10, 11 with a newborn, especially now that my little one's, like, walking and stuff. It's like you've just got to be full-on attention with her, and then you're not getting no sleep during the night, so you're waking up feeling like, fucking hell. But, yeah, it's all fun and games, isn't it?
Yeah. Another reason I'm broke, though, because I can work from home, set my own schedule, and be around the baby, you know. If I was still running these big businesses, I've been buggered.
Yeah.
You know, it takes a lot out of you, as you know, having staff and turnover, well, not turnover, overheads.
Yeah.
And then if you have a newborn, I can see how people go a bit loopy.
I mean, have you ever, so, you know, from the broker side of things, you're obviously speaking to sellers and stuff like that. Have you been tempted to be like, I'll make them an offer, or I'll try and get into it or something?
Yeah, there has been a few times where I've sat there and thought, whoa, that's a good deal.
Yeah.
You know, I love a deal. Yeah. You know, I used to, as a wind-up to other people in the no money down call space, call myself a deal master, because I'm a bit of a wind-up. But, I see some of these deals, I think, that's a good deal. Like, even the HGV score I sold a couple of weeks ago, obviously being in my niche, I was like, bloody hell, like, if I was still in the game like that, I'd be over like a rash. But, yeah, definitely. But then I think actually I centred myself back and say, why am I doing this? I'm not doing it to have all these overheads, staff, trucks, maintenance, fuel, insurance. Basically all I'm saying is ag, you know, that's all they are to me now. So I don't really want to do that again. So yeah, you do get tempted for a quick second, but then you realign yourself, actually, I really like my life, you know, I live in a lovely area, in a lovely house, lovely wife, lovely daughter. You know, I'm really content in life. Yeah, we're doing what I do, and I get to talk. As I said earlier, I think before the pod, I get to talk to all these different business owners and find out their industries and what makes them tick, and just the different niches. And I love it because I love business. I was saying to a gentleman yesterday, actually, business is like a language to me. Yeah, you know, I love it. You know, I really do love business. And just learning about these different types of business, stuff that I've never worked in before, like a window manufacturing business that got sold on Monday, yesterday. God, it feels, time is weird when you've got a newborn, as you know. But yeah, like I didn't know someone making windows. One, there was even English companies doing that. I always assumed we imported it from China, stuff like that. But I didn't know they made so much money or what goes into actually making a window. So yeah, I do love business brokering because it gives me the ability just to go across the board with businesses.
Yeah, I mean, talking to business owners about like customer acquisition, like how are they doing it, the margins,
Yeah.
you know what the struggles are, you know where they'd like to take things if they had the ambition to grow it.
It's funny actually. So with like the vehicle recovery or the HGV markets, the training markets that I was actively buying in, because I'd see all these businesses' accounts. It was a good way to grow my own business, even if I didn't buy them, because I think, hold on, I didn't know you use Shell.com for your marketing. That's actually working, because I've heard some people have really bad results with that. And this one business got great results. Or when I used to do the Facebook marketing for the HGV school, cost of customer acquisition was about £80. The margin was about £1,200 to £1,300. So I knew I'd just run that forever. And I'd only spend £20 a day, you know. So once a week, you know, a client would sign up.
Yeah.
I implemented that for every school I eventually bought.
Yeah.
Just as a lead generation funnel. You know, but you learn that from reviewing other people's businesses, and especially as a young entrepreneur, if you're going into these people who've done it 30 years and they're successful, and on the pretense that you want to buy their business, which is true and genuine, but even if you don't buy the business for whatever reason, you fall out, the valuation's off between the parties, you learn so much. You learn so much. Like, it's like, you know, you don't need to, you know, buy a book or a course online. You know, you can literally just go straight to your biggest competitor and find all their secrets out.
Yeah.
And you don't want to poach customers, you don't want to, you know, play dirty tactics, but if you learn that's how they customer acquisition, or this is how much they pay their staff, you understand the market rates of that job, you understand, you know, how to get customers, you learn so much, you know, from that. I remember once I found out that there was this company that would actually lend customers the $4 or $5 it costs to get HGV training as a finance, like a Klarna or Wonga.com type thing.
Yeah.
And I never knew. Like, to me, I was like, yeah, you got to pay me up front $3 to $4. Sorry, mate, I know it's a lot. You know, I get it. You know, it's a bit crap how much it is to, you know, for you to elevate your career. But then this company is a finance house, and it'll give the customers the finance, pay you up front.
Yeah.
And I only learnt that through looking at buying one of my competitors once. I was like, who's this? And they told me all about it. I was like, light bulb moment, ding.
Yeah.
And that helped drive more sales in, because people who couldn't necessarily afford it in one lump could now finance it and get onto our course, and we get paid in full. Win-win.
Yeah.
You know?
What I've found as well is like looking at a business to buy makes you think about your business and how you need to position that. Because if you're like, well, I think he's I think he's overvaluing this because of X, Y, and Z. So you're like, well, when I go prepare mine for sale, or I better sort X, Y, and Z out so the buyer doesn't think that about my business. So it's just a different mentality, isn't it?
Yeah, and so I would say to buyers in general, and a lot of people, you know, let's say they've built a property empire like yourself, or a construction firm, or they've built in transport like myself. And I've done this before, where I've bought businesses outside my sector, and they're usually the worst buyers because I don't know enough about that sector. Like running a fish stall or a music studio or even a recruitment business, I know nothing. You know, I think you should stick to your niche. If you want to make money.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to fuck around and not make money, buy whatever you want. You know, buy something you have no fucking clue about, you know. But, you know, and you can talk their language, most importantly. And any serious, successful business owner will suss you out quicker than anyone. You know, they will look at you as a chump or a champ in their particular niche. And unless you've got bags full of money to go, yeah, here's your $1.5 million for the business, no questions asked, like, you know, when Michael Jackson kicked the people out of Neverland and paid them an extra $1 just to get in there that week. You know, if you're that kind of buyer, fair enough. You know, you don't need to know the industry like the back of your hand. But if you're a young upstart or a budding entrepreneur, or someone's doing LBO, for instance, try and elevate your wealth and grow your business through acquisition, and stick to your niche. I see, and this is one of the problems I have with these business buying communities. You'll see someone who's, I don't know, let's say a lawyer by profession, and suddenly they're trying to buy a construction business. And I think, what the fuck? Like, firstly, I think you've never been a labourer, you've never been a bricklayer, you've never been a sparker, you've never been a plumber, you've never been a project manager, you've never done property development, you've never done anything to do with that sector. You wouldn't know what a bloody brick costs to lay. So don't, just stick to it, You know, go buy a solicitor's practice, go buy a will writing or estate planning agency, a trust service, go even just a vertical of your niche. Do something around there, unless, Mr. Solicitor, you want to go be a bricklayer for 2 years, learn what it's like to work on site, do something, retrain yourself before you go buy in that bit field. I just see a lot of people, they just do silly jobs, or it's not silly jobs, they have a certain profession and they go try and buy in a completely different profession. I think that's foolish, because no lender's going to back you. No lender's going to. They look at your CV and go, "Are you sure? Like, are you sure, mate? You ain't been hit in the head recently, by chance." And you're not going to know what to look out for either. Let alone if the lender won't back you, nor many people. But even if you get the value right with the owner, you agree a deal, even if it's structured completely seller finance, and it works in your favour, you'll get into that. You'll get your feet under the desk, and you'll just crumble. You will crumble like a cookie because you don't understand what it is to be in that industry, to run a business like that. You have no fucking clue, and it's just silly. I just see a lot of people do that. I see people writing their bios, like, even the opposite way around. I'm a bricklayer, but I want to buy an accountancy practice. You know what I mean? It just doesn't make sense. Yeah. To me anyway.
Thanks so much for coming on, Charlie, mate. Can they, where can people find you?
Charlie Norton on LinkedIn, or go to my website, www.vamosbusiness.com, or just email me at charlie@vamosbusiness.com for a free business valuation. Yeah. Or just a general chit chat. I love helping people out.
Yeah. Yeah, brilliant. Thanks so much for coming on, mate.
Cheers, Matt.
Cheers, bud.